two, one. You're good.
I am powerless over alcohol, and my life was unmanageable. So that's the way my alcoholic life ended up being the last couple of years. And that's the way it sort of is now. Things are a little bit in better control. I am still powerless over alcohol. Today, we're going to talk about step one from AA. We do not represent Alcoholics Anonymous. And this is just our opinion, our experience with step one, our experience with Alcoholics Anonymous, and some of the goods and maybe some of the bads that we've experienced. And as far as powerless over alcohol, one of the things that I remember that really defined my powerlessness over alcohol was every morning or every other morning, my walk to the liquor store. And on my walk to the liquor store, I'd be thinking, this is going to be the last bottle I'm going to buy. And how many times did I do that? I did that hundreds of times. And I would go back and get another one. There was a powerlessness. And there's some other things you can look at to kind of figure out if you're powerlessness too when you really step back and look at it. So that's what we're going to talk about today. How you doing, Marcus?
Doing good. Yeah, this is an interesting topic. I think a lot of people are afraid to admit that they're alcoholics because that means one, they've been defeated, and two, they can't drink anymore. And for me, there was nothing more terrifying than the thought of you won't be able to drink again for the rest of your life. And the reason it was terrifying was because when I sat there, alcohol had become my go-to. It had become my solution for everything. So no matter what went on in life, happy day, bad day, loss of a loved one, whatever went on, I always turned to alcohol. And so my brain had equated alcohol with happiness, with contentment, and with security. And I always thought, okay, I'm secure as long as I have alcohol nearby. I'm secure as long as I can drink. So by someone saying, hey, you need to admit that you're powerless over alcohol, is our sound okay? It should be working. All right, that should be better. But to admit that I was powerless over alcohol was a very difficult thing because of the fact that I had to give up alcohol. Like, meaning that meant, okay, nail in the coffin. Now I am completely out there in the world without my security, without this thing that was keeping me basically afloat. I felt like I needed it to live. And so when these AA guys and all these people came up to me and they're like, hey, you need to admit that you're powerless over alcohol. You need to admit that your life is unmanageable. And, again, my life from my perspective was pretty manageable. I was a functioning alcoholic. Sure, I fell asleep in the middle of the day and felt like shit every single day and drank myself into oblivion every single day, but my bills were paid. I was the breadwinner of the house, and my bills were paid. I was the owner of my business, and my business was somewhat taken care of. Looking back now, it's like, how did that manage? But it was manageable. So when these people came by and said, hey, your life's unmanageable and you need to say that alcohol has kicked your butt, I was like, nah, it ain't kicked my butt. I got a few little butt left in me. I can go out there and drink again. And to say that my life was unmanageable, well, that's kind of a loaded term, right? It was like, okay, how do I do this? Unmanageable for who? Terry's unmanageable might be far more uh, uh, elegant than mine, right? So I might be like, hey, I'm totally cool living in the gutter. That's fine. I mean, as long as I got my booze and, maybe I live in Hawaii where it's like, okay, you don't really need a house. You can just live on the dirt there. It's kind of nice. Maybe that's okay for me. So to look at this idea of unmanageable, I know there's a lot of alcoholics out there that are like, okay, I see these steps and these things and admitting I'm an alcoholic, but I'm not that bad. I'm not that bad. Sure, I dig through the rubbish bin to find empty bottles so I could pour myself a drink in the morning. Sure, I drink no matter what around the clock, but my life's not unmanageable. You don't know what you're talking about. I'm managing. Might not be well, right? I might not be doing the things I think I want to do, but to say I'm unmanageable seemed like a stretch. Was that an issue for you, Terry? Was it like, what are you talking about? Got my house, got my dog. What's unmanageable?
I think that that second part of step one, that my life had become unmanageable, that was kind of a difficult thing for me to understand, even though if I look back on it, things were pretty darn unmanageable. If you look at the big picture of my life, I had stepped away from my job. Of course, I looked at it as well. I had too much work, and I quit on my own. I didn't get fired. I quit, and then I lost my marriage at the time, and I was just burning through money because there was no income coming in. And but I had a dog, I had a house, things were okay. I kind of was able to get through the day, but just like you were saying, I was passing out in the middle of the day and passing out at night and having to wake up in the middle of the night to take a couple drinks so I can go back to sleep, if you want to call it sleep. And things were unmanageable. I think what a lot of what that second half of that step is saying to us, though, is that our lives have become unmanageable. So there's signs that are showing us that our life is becoming unmanageable. Maybe for me, these signs might have been bigger, but it could be little, just super little things. Like maybe you got a little bit too drunk at a party or something and you embarrassed yourself, or maybe you said the wrong thing to somebody and you kind of hurt your trust with them and you hurt that relationship. And it could be those just tiny little things. And if these things continue on and you continue to drink, and if they start to get worse, then this is where the unmanageability will really start to take over. And this is where alcohol takes us, is it just keeps getting worse and worse. As if we drink too much, we become addicted. And that's where that powerlessness comes in. But we become addicted to alcohol, and then we need it more and more. And the problem is, if we keep drinking, we continue to need more. Our tolerance goes up. We need more to get that same feeling for less amount of time. And it starts to just dig at us and dig at us. And eventually what happens is we start to lose big things in our life. Like for me, I lost the marriage, lost the job, and probably the house was going to come soon after that. And or we start to have health problems. My health was terrible when I was towards the end of my drinking, and even during it, it was really bad. High blood pressure. If I squatted down to pick up, let's say, a pencil that I dropped, I'd stand up and get dizzy. Things like that. I was getting really unhealthy, and for a lot of people, there's other problems, liver issues, and whatever. Alcohol affects every cell of our body, and this is what happens if we continue to drink. We're gonna Our life will become unmanageable to the point where we don't have a life anymore. And I've seen it many times with people, and it's such a sad thing, and it's a terrible way to go as well. But that was kind of my experience with the unmanageability part. It took a little while for me to realize what unmanageability meant, but it was that my life was pretty unmanageable and that things were starting to go downhill. There's a lot of alcoholics will they have a tough time accepting this part of the step because, like you were mentioning, Marcus, their business is okay, their family's okay, they haven't gotten in trouble with the law, they never got arrested, thrown in jail, got in fights, things like that,
Mm-hmm.
and things seem to be okay. But they have this internal battle going on in their mind where they're thinking about alcohol all the time, or they're just trying to fight the fact that they want a drink now, or that they're looking forward to that drink at 5 o'clock when they get off work, or whatever. And that's where that first part of the step comes in, that powerlessness. And for me, the powerlessness, it's I mentioned that I had to go to the liquor store and I think about quitting. That was one part of the powerlessness over alcohol. But where it really comes into play is when you really think about it, that It's just as simple as alcohol affects the way I think. When I drink alcohol, it changes the way I am, changes the way I think. When I have that first drink, that craving starts. I want another one. I don't know when I'm going to stop. Am I able to stop at 2? Am I able to stop at 6? Am I going to keep drinking all day, all night? I don't know that. That's where some of that unmanageability, I mean, the powerlessness comes in. So this is a really hard step for people to take because it really means kind of a deflation of our ego. It's like, oh, I don't have control of this. Maybe I
Yeah,
need to get some help. And for me, that's what I had to do. There's, a few people can get through this without help, but I think, you know, most people need help to get through this. It's hard to see this on your own when your mind is being controlled by alcohol.
absolutely. And I think that's the thing that is so important to realize, because we look at it like alcohol is this thing that I can either quit or not. Like it's whatever. And until you actually try to really quit, you don't realize the hold that it has on you. And it's interesting too, because a lot of us, we are afraid to admit that alcohol has bested us, and we're afraid to admit our life is unmanageable because of alcohol. And we don't realize that we have accepted a really crappy life that has become because of alcohol, right? Like we don't think about, oh, I walked to the liquor store with one shoe because I needed alcohol. Like, here's a guy who get up and come out in the backyard. I got to have a button down shirt on. That's the way my dad, taught us stuff. Like, even if the wife is like, hey, can you take the garbage to the curb? It's like, okay, I don't go outside in sweats. I got to put on the jeans. But here I was, in sweats walking to the liquor store with a half a shoe on. And my life had become something that I didn't recognize anymore. And it's because of chemical alteration. It's like we talk about all the time here on this channel, which, if you guys like these meetings, we're here every week at 11 a.m. Eastern. And we also have Talksober.com where we have some meetings as well. But we want to take a look and say, okay, I don't recognize my life because the chemical component has changed it. And it's a lot like when you have a friend who starts dating a girl who's different than them, or a guy who's different than them, and all of a sudden you start to see their personality change and they get more introverted or extroverted or whatever it is, and it's all because of this person. It's not something that was internal in your friend to begin with, right? It's something that chemically changed because of the chemicals of love, because that's what that emotion produces, is chemicals. I don't care who you are, that's the way chemicals work. And I don't care who you are, alcohol works the same way. It is going to change you over time. It is going to affect you in a different way, usually a negative way. Right? It doesn't usually affect you in a positive way. If you do think that alcohol affects you positive, it's probably because alcohol is making you think that, because you feel better about it. Right? And that's the whole thing about life, is like, do you want to feel better about something, or do you want to be better about it? And in sobriety, we have a chance to say, hey, look, this is where we were. Up until now, I've been living like an automatic robot, right? I picked up things, my brain adapted, I worked my way through life. And now, alcohol, admitting that your life has become unmanageable, is also admitting that you were living life in a reactionary mode. So as you're reacting to life as it came towards you. And now we realize that, wait a minute, I don't have to do that. I can pause. Like if someone calls me, let's say my family calls me and yells at me on the phone, I can choose how I want to respond. You say, oh, no, you got to yell at them. You got to tell them a thing or two. No, I actually don't. I don't need to do anything. I could put the phone on the thing and go outside and go for a jog and let them just yell at my wall till they figure out there's no one there, which surprisingly is a long time. People will yell at the phone for a long time, even though there's not someone on there. And they feel just as good as if they did yell at you. So, like, you're doing them a favor, you're doing yourself a favor, and you're not reacting, you're starting to respond. And what would happen if we started to respond? Because right now, a lot of people have difficulty with alcohol cravings. That's a big thing. Like, what do I do with these cravings? Well, you don't do a damn thing about them, because You know what you've been doing is you have been doing stuff about cravings. Every time you have a craving, you go drink. That's training your mind, and that's an action you're taking because of a craving. But what if I sit here and I say, that craving doesn't matter? I'm going to have 10 million more in my lifetime. I don't need to do anything. I can just sit here and crave alcohol. It's the same as if you want a pie. Like if I want peach pie and it's the middle of December when peaches are not in season, I'm not jonesing to get the pie. I'm like, okay, well, I guess I'll wait till January or June or whatever, whenever peaches come off the tree. Apparently, ours never do because the squirrels like to take the little seed peaches and take them all. Damn squirrels. But at any rate, we look at it and we're like, okay, now I can respond rather than react. And I could take a step back and I don't need to live in this world of constant chaos. And that's where I was with alcoholism. I was in a world of chaos. I reacted to everything. It was like, you're going through like those space movies where there's all these rocks and debris coming at the spaceship. That's how I felt. And some of the rocks were fights with spouse, and some of the rocks were, my grandpa passing, and some of the rocks were this, and some of the rocks were old trauma from way back. And I sat here in my seat as if I had to respond to every one of them. Now I realize that I've gone through life and they're chemical impulses in the brain. It's all they are. A craving is a chemical impulse in the brain that says, I'm stressed. I remember that alcohol used to work. It's all it is. Or a smell. I used to smell alcohol and it smelled pretty good. Right? Even to this day, I'm 8 years sober now. And even to this day, if I smell alcohol, sometimes it smells good. Like, hey, yeah, I like the smell of like chemicals, but apparently, sometimes I do miss that. Does that mean I have to do anything? No. You're in charge now, and that's the deal. As we look at it, we're like, our life was unmanageable because I was living it in an unmanageable way. Drinking alcohol to cover up my feelings about things that I think I need and wanted. Screw all that. What if I just accept what is? Because you know what? The truth of the matter is you have been accepting what is. But it's not a good what is. It's an alcoholic what is. And now I can accept this is where I'm at. And I know what alcohol does. Therefore, I don't want that unmanageable life anymore. I want to live life on life's terms. And when things come at me, I'm going to take each and every one and look at it and respond and take a minute. Take a minute to respond.
It's interesting in what you were just saying, because it really shows kind of the difference, a little bit of the difference that your alcoholism was than mine. As far as like for you, alcohol a lot of times was an escape from negative situations,
Mm-hmm.
and like with the family, the yelling, all that, or past trauma and things like that. And for me, I didn't have a lot of trauma in my life. And during my real height of drinking, shall we say, I did have anxiety, and I did do some drinking for that. But really, the main reason I would drink is because it made me feel good. And I did have that thought in my mind that I was an addict and that I need to stop. But really, what it was just kind of making me feel good. It was that simple for me. And really, what this step really entails is basically the fact that we're admitting that we have an addiction to alcohol and that it's causing problems. It's really that simple. And for me, that's what I had to do was I am addicted to this. If I keep going, it's going to get worse. If I stop now, maybe I'll be okay. I don't know. I just don't know how to stop. That's what the problem was. I didn't know how, and I kind of did. I thought there's meetings and there's the doctor and all that, but I don't want to go to them and spill my feelings and all that. I'd rather just sit here and in my chair and watch bad TV and be comfortable for that few minutes that alcohol makes me comfortable. And that was kind of my thought or non-thought process. I don't know what you'd call that, but that's kind of the direction that I went for the longest time until finally I hit that point where I absolutely had to quit or I wasn't going to survive. And
Yeah.
that's unfortunately that's what it takes a lot of people, and some people don't actually survive. They get to that point, and it's a difficult thing to make that acceptance because it does require some big changes and requires changing most of what you do, requires changing your entire thought process in life. But the one thing is, and the saving grace for me is that it was not that difficult to make those changes. It was just a little bit at a time. The big thing I had to do was stop drinking. Now that was big. But as far as changing the thought process, I didn't have to change my perspective on life immediately. I did have to not drink 1 minute at a time, but once I started that sober process, then I was able to start to identify where I needed to change things and what I needed to do to change things. And that was a big revelation for me. It kind of gave me a lot of freedom because once I got through that withdrawal and all the detox symptoms, I was just left with this kind of crazy mind. But I saw that there was a light at the end of the tunnel that I could start to work towards. And working with other alcoholics that were sober, where they were able to show me that, and they were able to show me that by telling me what they did and just by being an example of what good sobriety can be. And that's what I tried to follow, and that's what I still do today, and I still try to pass that message on to people like you guys that are watching.
Absolutely. And Ano says, I know exactly that my life was unmanageable, but I wasn't able to fight it. I felt hopeless and helpless. I felt helpless at the mercy of alcohol. I hated my addiction. Couldn't get out of the trap. No psychologist could help me. My hopelessness increased more and more. And I think that is the plight of many an alcoholic. And I think that what happens is we're going by on the road and we're like riding our bike and there's like all these rocks in the way. And you're like, oh, man, it's just difficult. You're flying off, and sometimes you fall on the ground and you get a pop tire and your rim bends. And Terry, the pro biker that he is, that rides like practically across the universe, comes over and he's like, Marcus, buddy, I know things seem difficult. And I'm like, dude, you don't even understand. I just need to get around these rocks. And he's like, no, Marcus, just chill a minute. I know how to ride bikes. And I'm like, no, you don't. You don't understand what I'm going through. There's all this stuff in there. I just can't get out of it. And I fall. And all of a sudden, Terry's like, dude, Marcus, look. He picks up my bike. He puts it on the smooth road and says, try this. I go, oh my God, that's amazing. I go, where have these roads been my entire life? And Terry's like, on the street. They're always there. They've been there since the 1920s or whenever they made roads. And so we look at that and we're like, wait a minute. So you're telling me that I've been going through my life fighting life. And we start to look at this and we start to understand exactly what's going on, right? We start to understand exactly what we need to do, okay? And we start to understand that it's not as difficult as it might seem. All we need is a new perspective and a new road. And then we just move on. And we look to things and, we look to psychology and things, and those can be good, but they can also be a trap. Like a lot of people spend their entire life trying to understand their mind. They never understand their mind. And then there it goes. Right? And we start to look at this and we start to understand that maybe, just maybe, I can just be here and I can just accept what is. Maybe life is easier sitting on the side of the road by my bike rather than trying to, scale the Grand Canyon with my bike against Terry's wise advice. And we start to look at things like there's a lot of people that say, I really struggle with trying to save money. Well, saving money it's an interesting thing because what happened in society is people invented paper that means you can buy things. And some people like to save lots of it because it makes you feel like now I have a lot of money, I can go and do something with it. But in actuality, if you are spending the money you make, you're living. That's fine. Like I don't like make a good dinner and then get mad that people ate it all. I'm happy that people made it all. I made something that everyone enjoyed and got use out of. Same thing with money. Is it good to have money in the bank? Sure. Is it good to stress yourself out continuously over it? No, because it doesn't really change until you change, right? Until you realize that you have everything you need right now: air, food, water, breath. That's all you need. But see, we keep wanting more, and we keep saying, "Oh, I need this and I need that," and we keep yelling at people like Terry that are like, "Dude, just ride your bike on the road. If you ride in the dirt and the rocks, you're gonna have a bumpy ride. And if you ride your life responding to everything, drinking alcohol to deal with it, like, oh man, I hit that rock, I need to drink because that rock shouldn't have been there. Who put it there? Nobody put it there. It just was there. I need to just choose a different path." And I think it's important to look at because so many of us are fighting life. So many of us are going against the grain, right? And, the whole saving money issue is pretty simple too. Make more or spend less. You will save. I guarantee it. Make more or spend less. Those are the two options, right? But people that say, "Oh, I want to spend money," they go out and buy a new car, and it's like, well, you apparently want a new car more than you want to save money or whatever. That's the fact. Like, you can look at your life and you can look at why and how it's unmanageable, or you could admit and say, "Hey, you know what? I'm not going to live this way anymore. I'm not going to live chemically altered. I'm not going to drink anymore." And when we start to realize that life isn't what we thought it was, because what happens is we live in this bubble where we really only see like maybe a couple feet ahead of us. But a guy in a helicopter, he looks down and he's like, "Oh, well, Marcus keeps going on that rock. He's going to fall off a cliff. He won't even know it. Terry continues on that road. He's going to end up in Napa and there's a bunch of booze there. Okay, maybe he'll ride past it. I don't know." But when you pan out and you start to look at life from above, you're like, wait a minute. So I'm sitting here thinking that I'm the most important thing in the world because I think about myself all day, every day. Let's face it, we all do. What if I change that? What if I started looking at life different? Yeah, my life has become unmanageable. So what am I going to do about that? First of all, I'm going to stop drinking because that's the reason it was unmanageable in the first place. Then I'm going to go and put my bike on a different path and start looking at life differently.
Yeah, we talk a lot about you get what you focus on, right? And to sort of continue on with that cycling analogy that you brought up. Um, so a lot of us, when we're trying to get sober, we have this rocky road that we're trying to get through, like Anno's talking about. It's tough. And sometimes we can't find that smooth road, and that's difficult. It just continues to be a rocky road. Well, I'm a road cyclist and I mountain bike. I don't mountain bike so much anymore, but it's interesting. When I used to mountain bike a lot, I always had this hard time. The only time I've ever crashed, at least so far, is on a mountain bike, and it's never been going downhill. It's never been going fast. It's going up, super steep stuff. My tire would get caught in a rut, and then my feet would be stuck in the pedals, and I'd fall over. And I've done that several times, and I couldn't stop doing that. Where I used to ride, it's just an extremely steep and very technical area to ride a mountain bike, and it was tough stuff. And then somebody told me something. They said, when you're riding your mountain bike, you need to look at where you want to go. It sounds really obvious, but don't look at those ruts. Don't look at where you don't want to go. Look at where you want to go. And I started doing that, and I stopped crashing. I was just, even if it's a little tiny little space to get through, look at that little space, and you can keep your wheels on it, and you don't fall over. And so the way this kind of works towards recovery and sobriety for me is I had to focus on what was working. And now for some of us, we got a lot of other things going on, especially if the family or the people you're living with are in active addiction, or at least they party a lot or whatever. It's difficult to focus on that. But that's what I found is what got me on that road to sobriety, is really focusing on what do I need to do today. Okay, these challenges are there. I understand they're there. I'm not going to just shut my eyes to these challenges, but I'm going to focus on what I need to do towards recovery. Okay, I'm these guys are all partying. They usually start partying in the evening. All right, maybe I should get away from the house at that time and go hang out with some sober people, even if it's just going out for coffee or going out to eat or whatever. Go get away from that situation. During the day, I can take care of stuff at home because they're not so bad. Or whatever the case may be. I've always tried to look at what can I do for my solution here? What can I do today or right now towards my sobriety? And that's what's worked for me. That's what I've seen other people do, and it's worked for them too. So that's kind of what I try to do on a daily basis.
Absolutely. And it is a lot about mindset and perspective. And if you guys are struggling with mindset and perspective, check out Talksober.com if you like the talks we do on this channel. Over at Talksober.com, you can go and click this yellow button right here. Fill this out. It'll give you all kinds of MP3s, MP4 videos, little talks you can listen to, PDFs that you can download and fill out and print and go through. It's like a whole 30-day mindset sobriety course that you can go through and learn about all the things that have kept me and Terry sober for like 16 years now total, 8 years each, and some of the struggles that we dealt with. And I think it'll really help because there's such a different perspective between how we both got sober, how we both became alcoholics, how we live our life, everything like that. And in addition, you'll be supporting the work that we do on this channel. So if you like what we're doing on this channel, go to Talksober.com, fill this out, and keep us going. There's also some other stuff you can check out at Talksober.com, our Facebook group, a private sobriety call, if I could speak correctly, a private sobriety call with Terry and myself, and all kinds of other stuff that you can check out to help you get and stay sober. Again, we're not counselors or rehab specialists or doctors. You should always see a doctor when you're trying to get sober. But Talksober.com has a lot of good resources for the mindset of how to get and stay sober.
Hey, and I want to just acknowledge a couple people here. Tony, congratulations, 2 years, 2 months, baby. That was your comment. And Timberwolf, you got what, 23 months, something like that. Michael Smith, 4.5 months. Oh, Timberwolf, almost 2 years. That's what it is. Awesome. Johnny was mentioning the news was a big trigger for me before COVID. I stopped watching and reading it. Best thing I ever did. Yeah, that's what I see a lot of people do. They just kind of get away from the news. I watch too much of it. And sure, it probably affects my mood and all that. But I am able to let go. And that's because I do realize that there's only so much I have control over. So I'm not suggesting that people go and watch news all the time. Maybe it's better to not watch it. But for me, it's important to be informed. But a lot of people need to get away from the news, and I understand that completely. In fact, when my wife wakes up every morning, I usually turn it off.
You got to hide the news. Like, I wasn't watching anything.
And David, 7 weeks. Awesome. It's always good to see all you regulars here. Onoano, good to see you. And Ben, GHC, good to see you. And Laurel, awesome. Have you been here recently, Laurel? I don't remember, but yeah, it's always great to see you.
Any thoughts on tapering to avoid AWS? That's a question I would ask your doctor, because, detox can be very bad. And so I would always go to a doctor and talk about tapering versus detoxing versus whatever, because they're going to know what to do. And it is a scary thing. I mean, a lot of people don't make it out of detox, or they have issues with detox, or have health problems, or whatever it is. And it's always best to do that within the confines of a doctor, or have them understand what's going on.
Yeah, the doctor's absolutely necessary. I tried tapering many, many times, and it never worked for me. I could not taper because I just end up drinking more again.
Yeah.
So I think for somebody that's truly addicted, it's just not going to work. You got to go to a doctor and have them help you.
Yeah. Eternal says, I have a massive problem with the news. Addict behavior, I suppose. Best thing to do is stay away from it for a long period of time, knowing that you're not going to miss anything. Like if something happens, you'll know. right? You know, like if you ignored the news 2 years ago, you'd still see people wearing masks, and you'd be like, okay, well, I mean, either they did their makeup wrong or something's going on, and then you can ask them. I remember during the 2016 elections, I was watching the news way too much, and there was no point. Like the outcome really didn't affect my life as much as I thought it did. And I mean, go back old school. Call your newspaper and get a newspaper every day if that's what you want. But staying informed versus mindlessly watching the news all day every day. I mean, there's a difference there. Like Terry turns it on in the morning, watches what's going on. You know, uh, maybe they tell him it's going to snow and he doesn't go out for a walk with the dog or whatever. Something like that is fine. But if it's a problem, cut it out for a while. Because what's going to happen is more news makes you want more news, just like TV. Like you binge watch a show because you started binge watching a show. I know that right now I don't smoke cigars. I used to, but if I smoked one, I know it would ignite the desire to have more. Right now, I don't really have the desire. Sometimes I'm like, yeah, I'd like one. But if I had one, then it would spark the desire. Same kind of thing with alcohol. It's chemically changing your brain. It's giving you a reward for your actions.
Yeah, absolutely. Hey, 708 days, JM. Good job.
All right, guys. Well, I think that's about it for today. If you like this topic, let us know in the comments. We're going to do the next 11 steps through the next 11 weeks. And we'll go through them together. And hopefully these spammer people go away because they keep coming up with new names. And you just got to keep hiding them. It's just annoying.
Oh.
But go to Talksober.com if you appreciate what we're doing. Get yourself signed up using the big yellow button. And we'll see you next time. Have a good one,
Thanks,
guys.
everybody.